Hey guys, gals, and non-binary pals. We are here with Aiden from Point of Pride to answer all your questions about how the money is being distributed and how we're going to be able to raise $4 million by trans people.
For trans people.
So Aiden, let's start by asking you, how did Point of Pride start, my friend?
Yeah, so Point of Pride started actually from my own need for gender-affirming care. So I decided to raise money, and this was in 2010. So I'm an elder trans, just so you know, you're talking to an elder. And yeah, so I needed my own top surgery, and I didn't have any money because, you know, I'm trans. So I started making t-shirts. I bought like a screen press, and I started making t-shirts and selling them. So I would buy the shirt for $3, sell it for $20, mail it for $2, keep the change. And then after I raised the funds, I decided to keep making t-shirts. And instead of, you know, keeping the profit, I started this annual surgery fund at the end of each year where I would give away those funds. So that's where the annual trans surgery fund came from. And then at the same time, I saw all of these trans masculine people burning binders. Like when they got top surgery, they'd burn their binders, which sounds like really cool and like affirming. You're like, yeah, like throw it into the fire, right? But all I saw in the smoke was like dollar signs of how much those cost and how many trans people don't have access to garments like that. And so I started telling people, instead of burning your binder, mail it to me. And if someone buys a shirt, which is a donation towards someone's surgery, then I'll mail them a binder for free. And so that's kind of how those first two programs initially started. And then in 2016, my buddy Jeff, who's also the co-founder of Point of Pride, we were like, you know what? This isn't really a for-profit. We're not really good at business. This is not working. We're giving away everything, which was great. But we were like, let's become a 501(c)(3), and so that's what we did.
So when you were starting this out, did you have any idea that this was going to be where we are right now?
No. Oh my God, not at all.
In the first couple of years, before we got involved last year, how much money did Point of Pride raise?
I have to look at the notes. It was less. So what we raised in those 8 years was less than what y'all raised in 30 hours.
That's wild.
Yeah.
It was like 600,000 that you raised.
It was something around 600,000.
And
yep. I have my handy dandy notebook here because we have a lot of stats.
Yeah.
About all of our recipients. Just to make sure that those with the most barriers to accessing care are the ones who are getting the funds and, you know, getting served in our community. And
how many people, if we raise $4 million this year, how many people will be eventually affecting and helping?
Yep, over 29,000 people will be affected.
That's a wild number. Where's the majority of that money going?
So the most amount of money will be going to our annual trans surgery fund, which last year, it's open every year for the entire month of November, where we accept applications. And we also have different times where you can come and kind of get a walk through an application, so you know what we're looking for, how to fill it out, things like that, if you have any questions before you go ahead and fill that out. And so we had just over 2,600 applications last year.
That's absolutely nutso-butso.
Yeah.
Aiden, so if we were to help every single applicant for the surgery fund, how much money would we actually need?
$45 million. No pressure.
Yeah.
No pressure.
Yeah. And the surgeries and HRT and electrolysis and garments, all of it is a lot of money.
Yeah.
A lot of money. So a lot of people that we help are from garments, like binders and gaffs. Mm-hmm. Who do we help mostly with those? Like, what is the audience that we help the most with that?
So it's about 70% of all of our binder and gaff recipients are under the age of 24. Because usually that's the first step, right? Like if you are transitioning, you know, maybe you're not even out yet, you want to start experimenting with, you know, how you see yourself, a binder, a gaff are two really great options to begin kind of on that journey. And the cool thing with our garment program is that we've given to over 100 different countries. The garment program is the one program that is not solely based in the U.S. That is served worldwide.
What is the demographic that is made up of a lot of the recipients of Point of Pride?
So our demographics are really, they're hard because they're hard to know, you know what I mean? Just because it means that, you know, so many people are suffering, right? 1 in 2 of our applicants are suffering from a chronic illness, or I believe it's 2 in 3 applicants are experiencing housing insecurity, either past, present, and a lot of 1 in 2 of our applicants are also experiencing have mental illnesses such as depression or anxiety. Neurodivergency is very high as well on our applicant pool. So 2 in 3 people served are living in high-risk states for anti-trans legislation. So that has gone up tremendously. And another one of the things in our kind of way in which that we get applications and we start reviewing them is we have different categories, right? So like, we talk about barriers to access to care. And so if you're living in a anti-trans state, like Texas or Florida or the other, 30 whatever terrible states, right? Like that is a cause to have an additional barrier. So for instance, when all of the legislation was going through from Florida and from Texas, we started shipping out kind of massively to those states, just in case there were some laws where if you shipped a binder to an individual, it could be considered aiding and abetting. So we're constantly in talks with different people who are dealing with legislation, different people who are fighting for our rights as trans and non-binary folks, and really making sure that we are prioritizing people whose rights are actively being stripped away, like between today, tomorrow, and next week.
Speaking of people in states like Texas, you mentioned a partnership with Elevated Access. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, Elevated Access is a really great nonprofit. And what they do is they have pilots who have their own charter planes. And so they help us get people access. So Elevated Access works with trans non-binary folks and people who are seeking abortions. And so what they'll do is they will have their volunteer pilots find somebody. So for instance, we just had somebody who flew to another state for HRT access. We had another person who was lined up to be flown from one state to another to get their surgery. So it's a really awesome program because those people would not be able to legally get care in the state that they're living in. And that's another huge expense, right? Just think about having to, you live in Texas and you need to go to California. You've got to get a flight. You've got to get a hotel. You have to have someone come with you, care, right? So the more of these expenses we can take off the plate of that trans or non-binary person who is seeking that gender affirming care, the more access they'll be able to get.
And I know that Point of Pride is a 501c3, which means things like binders and gaffs are purchased in America and then shipped out, but services like surgeries, HRT, all have to be provided in America. Could you talk a little bit more about people that are interested in possibly still accessing things like the surgery fund from across the seas? Because I know that they have the option to travel to the U.S.
Yeah, it's great. So everything you said is correct. If you're looking to get any of your services from Point of Pride as a recipient, you will have to have it here in the U.S. And so that means you will have to have some type of passport, a travel visa, and you'll have to be able to get yourself here. And that is just some of the stipulations that come with being a 501(c)(3) here in the U.S. Unfortunately, it's not something that we can control, but once you are here, we can help you. So we definitely encourage those who are maybe have the ability to get here, but don't have the ability to get the access to care to apply for sure. We are always, our biggest thing is if you're a trans or non-binary person and you have, institutional and systemic reasons as to why you are unable to get the care you deserve, we want to help you. And we also believe that every single person, all 2,600 people, deserve this healthcare. It is life-saving, and that's, it saved my life. It saved, 90% of our entire organization is trans, queer. So, you know, we all know what it's like, and we know what it's like to not have it, and we know what it's like to have it, and we know the difference and impact it made in our lives. And we understand that there are so many people right now who just really feel like this would never happen for them. And unfortunately, they will make choices and decisions in their life that can greatly impact them in the future now because they don't have that belief. And one part of Point of Pride is to try to remind people that there are people out there trying to help you. And even if they're not in your backyard, even if they're not in your town, or even feel like they're in your county or your state, we're here. We are here to help you. We want you to know that there's a community out there, that we love you, that you deserve the care that you need, and we are trying to do our part in providing that for you.
Are people able to donate year-round, Aiden?
Yes. You can go to pointofpride.org/donate, and you can donate year-round.
If people want to learn more about the information that you're giving, because you're giving us a lot of information,
yes,
where is the best place for them to access all of this?
Yeah, so if you go, well, actually, during the event, the Keep Up page, we want to talk about that page?
Yeah, we can talk about the Keep Up page.
Yeah, so you can go to pointofpride.org/keep, or is it /? We had this conversation.
I think it's /.
I think it's /.
Pointofpride.org/ whichever way it's supposed to be, Keep Up. That's where we're going to have a lot of the information about where the funding from last year is going. We just announced $670,000 to 47 different trans and non-binary recipients for our annual surgery fund. So that would be the number one thing. But also, if you scroll to any of the pages of pointofpride.org and you scroll to the bottom, if you sign up for our newsletter, you'll get every single blog, every single announcement, every single opportunity there is to donate, different events that we will be going to. If you want to come and say hi, that would be the best place to find that information.
We've talked a lot about where the money is going to go and kind of the start of Point of Pride. But I would love to know where the money went last year and kind of how that was distributed and where we're at with all that.
Yeah, so the very first thing we did was actually expand our electrolysis program. So our electrolysis program originally was a grant for $1,200, but what we kept finding over the past years was that actually wasn't the amount that was really needed for someone to get, which is our most common recipient for our electrolysis fund is a trans femme individual who is seeking removal of hair on their face or neck. And we know that that is directly impactful for safety, foremost, for job security as well. And so we upped that from $1,200 to $2,000. And then we also created a re-up program. So an opportunity where actually from the first year, which is actually pretty cool that I'm saying this out loud, from the first year, every single recipient got the opportunity to re-up for an additional $2,000, so that if the first time around, even if it was 4 years ago, they weren't able to get all of what they needed accomplished, they have the opportunity to. And I believe like within the first like 3 hours, at least like 10 or 11 people were like, yes, please, can I re-up? So that was really cool. That's one of the places. And then we immediately put $80,000, I believe it was, into our surgery fund, since some of the candidates were going for facial feminization surgery. For those who don't know, it can really range in pricing there. So we were able to put another 80 grand into there. We just announced we'll be giving anywhere from 250 to 300 electrolysis recipients. Wow, which is awesome. Yeah, and so what we'll be doing with any money that it has not been spent between the 365 days between last year and this year is we have a 3-year plan. And our 3-year plan is really based on the fact that, unfortunately, I don't think anybody's getting free healthcare anytime soon. I don't think that is happening. I want to believe it will happen in our future, but it's not right now. And it's really important that Point of Pride is here for the future, right? This isn't the first year. This isn't the only year people are going to need this. They're going to need it in 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now. So we want to make sure that we can provide those services. And also, that's a lot of people. Yeah. That's a lot of people. 11,000 people from 2 million.
And not to mention that when we raised the money, the company was not ever at that position before. No. So we expanded it like overnight. What was it? Did you say 40?
It was, so essentially, if within the 8 to 10 years from when you started raising for your own top surgery to our first TikTok-a-thon together, there was around $600,000, a little bit more, give or take, to 2.2 million, essentially overnight. How did that play a factor into how Point of Pride operated?
Yeah, so when we raised that money, we had one full-time staff member.
Wow.
And everyone else is volunteer. And everyone had been volunteering until January of that year.
Yeah.
So we had only had a full-time staff member for, what is that, 3 months? 3 or 4 months? And so immediately we were like, okay, well, someone needs to quit their full-time job and start working because we have a lot of recipients we have to care for. And when you book something, you need to pay it right away. You need, there's a lot of things that happen in succession to one another. So growing is important.
Can you speak a little bit more about how long does it take from the moment that people apply to that you accept their application to then choosing people and then ultimately getting the help they need from HRT to surgeries? Like, how long can that process take?
Yeah, that's a great question and for other people to know. So I'll use the surgery fund as an example since it's our biggest fundraiser we have. So our applications open in November. So they're the entire month of November. A month before that, leading up to it, we have these different sessions that you can attend to learn more, to have questions answered, best ways to fill out the application, what we're really looking for. We do not grade on spelling. We don't grade on the ability to tell a story. Like, that is not part of it, but just how to articulate, in as clear as possible, like why you need this, what are your barriers, and how will your life be changed. So there's those sessions happening leading up. So that happens sometime in October, then the month of November. Then we have 3 different people look at each application, and at least one of them has to be a board member. And so that's a process in itself. So last year, I think I read 1,000 applications over the course of like 6 weeks, something like that. And so then there's the application process. Then sometime in January into February, we get our top 50, which now it's getting longer because now we gave 47 recipients this year, which was really amazing. So that happens between January, February. In mid-February, we announce to the individuals, but we don't announce publicly yet. Then in March, once they accept or if they decline, then we find another person to fill that spot. And then we ask them for a bio. They get to create their own bio, write their own story. Then we make the announcement. We also, if you go to our website, you'll see some faces are blurred out. That's for privacy of that individual. Not every trans or non-binary person wants to say, hi, I'm Aiden and I got top surgery, right? They want to stay anonymous, and so we respect them. And then we use a profile picture that represents them that they agree with. We blur out the face, and then we use a fake name just to kind of, represent that individual. So that process, all the way from October all the way till the end of March into April, is the entire process. So you could be waiting, 4 or 5 months to hear back.
And then that's just if you're getting accepted, right? And then once you're accepted, then it can take months for someone to find the correct surgeon for them. And just to clarify, Point of Pride does not pick the surgeon. And actually the recipient picks the surgeon in any state, right? Regardless of where they live. And then they have to find, a lot of the people that you're helping are people who are in positions where they have multiple jobs. And they need to find time to actually take off of those jobs. And then they need to get the surgery. So that can take up to a year or more, right?
Yeah, it's all great points. So we used to do 12 months, and then we realized that people were like, that's not enough time. Like, I need more time. And that's because maybe they need to work up for the PTO because they have to get paid. They can't take the time off, right? They have to find the surgeon. So for some people, they're like well on their way. They've had a surgeon for years in mind, and they're so ready to do it, and it can happen quickly. But for others, it can take over a year. So we give recipients 18 months
Okay.
And then if they are very good at communicating with us and letting us know how's it going, we also have different touch points that we make with them to check in on them. It can be sometimes, depending on the situation, it can be negotiated to be extended. For instance, one person just had, during COVID, their surgeon just canceled on them like a week before. And so we extended it because we were like, okay, well, you have to go through the whole process all over again. So it can take, I mean, we're talking about anywhere from, 18 months to 2 years for the full process between when you applied to when you actually are able to get that surgery. And again, it really just depends on the person.
So the money that we raised last year will still be helping people next year.
Yeah.
Even.
Yep.
Yeah, that's wild. That timeline is wild.
Yeah.
And trying to help everybody isn't like an instant thing. It can literally take years to try to provide the care that we're trying to do.
Yep.
And I think that's partially why Jory and I have decided to work with Point of Pride, because of the infrastructure they have in place and the fact that you have accountability. And when we're thinking of organizations like this, this is a very expensive stuff. So putting it all in our money in one basket that is organized, been around for a long time, and has the abilities and the connections with all the surgeons,
right,
can really help us actually effectively help people.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of questions that I get, and I know Jory gets similar questions, about why we don't do direct mutual aid, right? Jory, do you want to talk about why we are doing work with a nonprofit over doing direct mutual aid?
Yeah, I mean, Aiden touched on it. Having people that are sitting there, dedicated time and time to not only follow through for the years it takes to access gender-affirming care is really important. It's a lot of work to shoulder as an individual from figuring out who has the biggest barriers of access to care, making sure that you're following through on that care, making sure that those people don't feel abandoned in that cause. There's a lot of different moving parts, and handling it as an individual feels next to impossible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just to continue on with that is, at this point, since last year, when y'all raised so much money, we used to have one person, Tyler, who's our program manager, amazing, and he would be able to take care of the individuals, because it was, a couple of dozen at a time, depending on when which fund it was. But this year, we need to hire a case manager, because you can't have 200 plus people getting electrolysis and then just feeling like they don't have anyone to email, or someone's going to email them back. Someone's going to make sure that they are following up as well, right? As we were saying, like, it could take time. Electrolysis isn't something you get in one shot, right? You have to go, you get a session, you could get, 10, 12, 15 sessions over the course of 8 months, right? And so just making sure that there's someone there for all of our recipients to be able to email, to hop on a phone call, hop on a Zoom, whatever they need, we're there to help them, as best as we can, to getting them to fulfill their award. Because sometimes you have people who are just like, I just can't find electrolysis.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking, because you're like, I wish I could just come to your town and we could walk into every single one and find you one.
So to clarify, this really helps a lot of people in the way that it is, because we actually have a system that's put in place that can actually take that off of the client, right?
Yeah.
Take it off the recipient, and then put it on a group of organization that like literally has that experience. Where I haven't done surgeries myself, but one of the burdens of doing those is trying to actually schedule it and talk to the surgeon and all that. And I know that's something that having help and having someone you can speak to really helps a lot. Also, vetting people is a huge part of what Point of Pride does as well. And if me and Jory were to use our platforms to vet people and help people at the rate that you're able to do that, it would take Jory and I years to be able to build up the infrastructure, to have people help us vet, to set out a standard of what that vetting would look like, to do all those things, to make sure that money is actually getting to the people directly. So that's why we're doing, direct. We're not doing GoFundMes over on nonprofit organizations because we need to have accountability. We need to make sure that money is actually delivered to the people who need it the most.
What does the future of Point of Pride look like in your mind?
Oh, I love that. So the most unique thing about Point of Pride is that we are direct service. And so when you think of a lot of other LGBTQ and national, not necessarily like the ones that are like we're here, you know, in Wisconsin, right? So like a Wisconsin based. But when you think about a national nonprofit, direct service is not something that people want to undertake because it's a lot of extra work. It's a lot easier to just have a brick and mortar and be like, hey, come to our event, come to our thing, and let's hang out. And those things are great, and they're so needed. And we were trying to fill a gap of direct service. And so that means, like, in our mind, there's the political world fighting the political fight. And that's beautiful. And I love all of the nonprofits, you know, Transgender Law Center, like all of the nonprofits who do that work. And, like, when I think of politics, I think of, like, here. And when I think of people in our community, I think of, like, right here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's what we try to do. We try to be right here where you are to get you the things that you need. And so I see that just growing, right? So right now we mail binders out of 2 different shipments. I really want to get a binder distributor in the UK because we have a lot of recipients over there, and it would be cheaper to mail it from there, right? If it's made there and mailed out from there. So I think of that. I think of the electrolysis program we were just talking about, right? So like getting electrolysis competent in what it is to care for trans and non-binary people. So we think a lot about the healthcare aspect, and I want to get, you know, I want to get a little bit more in depth in that as we go into the future. And that is going to mean, you know, more people, you know, more staff growing, and feeling really confident and being a voice in those stories. Because I think, again, like it's so focused on the political. It's like, it's so political because of the healthcare aspect of it, you know? And so I want to raise that up a little bit more.
There is a ridiculous amount of money, a ridiculous amount of time that goes into all of this. This is wild hearing you talk about all of this because the amount of money and the amount of time and the amount of patience and the amount of like support you need to actually pull this off is pretty incredible.
Well, I mean, I'll take the minute now. Like, we at Point of Pride are so grateful for you, Mercury, and for you, Jory, for, you know, working with us and trusting in us. And it's so important to us that we are, you know, transparent, that we say we do what we say we're going to do, that we can get this information for you, for everyone who's donating, for all of those who are interested. Also, just letting people know, like, hey, we're here. Do you need something? Let us know. So, yeah, just thank you so much. It's so exciting. I was here last year. I cried after we hit the first million. I was like, oh, my God, what is even happening right now? So, yeah, it's been really beautiful. And we would not have had this ability to help this many people and grow without these two and the over 55,000 people who donated. So all of you as well.
I want to take the time to say thank you, Aiden, for the work that you do. Thank you for using your platform to starting Point of Pride and making this all happen. And I want to say a big thank you to my bestie, Jory, for being a wonderful human being, for helping me do this this year and last year, and being a showboat, and I appreciate it. If there's not any more questions, I think that we're good. Thank you for your time, you two. And I hope that you learn a thing or two that makes you feel comfortable. And if there is more that you want to know, you can always reach out to pointofpride.org in order to do so. But I think we're ready to go and raise $4 million.